you very much for joining us today. The first question, and let's just go ahead and get to the heart of the matter. We'll keep our answers very briefly so we can kind of move along to the various questions we have. What do you see, and we'll start off with you, Congressman Lou Frey, what do you see as the most critical issues facing the nation as we go into this election cycle?
The deficit in the budget. If you look at your text you've been giving and some of the charts in there, you'll find one chart that shows in about 15 years, as the country ages, we have 20% of the baby boomers over into Social Security, that the money spent on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and interest will take up every penny of the budget. Every penny of the budget, which means no money for defense, no money for the National Institute of Health, no money for education, no money for space, which tells you also one other thing: we can't let that happen. So we're facing a problem that you can't say, oh, it'll go away or something will change. It isn't going to change. Tough decisions are going to have to be made if there are going to be any changes. And I think if you take away nothing else from this meeting, just look at that chart and remember it. And you are part of the millennial generation, 45 million of you nationally. You're the biggest bunch of voters. The second biggest bunch of the baby boomers, 40 million. And we have interesting contrast at the table because one of the problems you're going to have to look at is Social Security, and there's a lot of issues to be solved on that today.
Okay, Social Security, by the way, so many young faces I see across the room. Right now, trust me, you're saying Social Security, I don't have to worry about it. You will worry about it, and I hope to God there's money there at the end of the time that you're supposed to get this, because it's a very difficult time. The older folks in the room are looking at me going, I'm going to get my piece of the pie, but you young folks may not get it, and that's why we need you to listen to everything that's happening today. Take that back home, discuss it with your family members, discuss it with your friends, because it's not doom and gloom, but if we don't do something about it soon, it will be. So let me hear your take on this also, Congressman Charles Melancon, Democrat from Louisiana. By the way, I saw, if you want to look him up, there's a moving video of him on YouTube.
I thought that's why they gave us a mic, but I guess we're supposed to talk into this.
Oil spill. Yeah, I was just telling about the YouTube video that I saw of you. A very moving clip of him giving, it was at the Gulf oil spill subcommittee meeting, and you were very moved because of, the wetlands of America were just damaged, and his area had been battered so much. So thank you for being with us today. So what is your answer to the most critical issues facing the nation as we look into this next election cycle?
I guess some of the frustrations that I have, and I'll reverberate on what Lou said about what our most pressing issues are. It's getting this country's fisc back in order and making it the greatest country, the most prosperous country, and the most politically and financially stable country that it ought to be in the world, to maintain its leadership as the leadership of the world. For those of you that don't understand Social Security, for those of you that are like me looking at Social Security, or some of you may be on Social Security, let me just tell you that I grew up in the sugar industry of South Louisiana. You have a sugar industry, a great sugar industry here in Florida, so you're somewhat familiar with it, except we weren't rumored to have the very wealthy people running ours. But my father told me about the time I finished college, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I'm still not sure I have the answer to that either. But he told me that the sugar industry would be gone sometime in the near future. And this was in 1970, he made the statement to me, just like Social Security would be gone. Well, there's a sugar industry, it's very vibrant and still going, and I believe if we can get the monies that have been stolen, if you would, from the Social Security system, put back in the Social Security system, we'll have many, many decades to come before we'll have a real problem. So the demise of Social Security, I think, is somewhat of a fallacy unless we don't take care of our business as a nation. So as we go forward, and one of the things, and this is my first opportunity to be at the Lou Frey Institute, and I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be here. I didn't sit and make prepared notes because I guess I should have. But one of the frustrations that I have as a former member of Congress and as a person in public service or public office is the number of people now that want to get into all the social issues rather than the governmental issues. what we need to run the government, what we need to take care of the infrastructure and the economy and whatever else. We can differ on a lot of issues, and we all do differ. I've been married for 40 years this August. If someone would have told me I'd have been married for 40 years to the same woman, I'd have laughed at him when I was in my 20s. And it wasn't an easy thing to do. It's been a difficult task, being able to, because no two people are compatible, and my wife and I, and by the way, she's a political science major, so I won't tell her about your comments, and Beth, we will
I like
speak
her
together.
already.
But I think that we need to get back down to what is government here to do. And government here should be here to provide for opportunities for the people of this country to take advantage of, whether it's research and development, whether it's aerospace, whatever it is, somebody's got to plant that seed. And that's where some of the disagreements come in. Now, what we see now, what you see every day, is a division between the ultra-conservative and the ultra-liberal. Then there are people like those of us at the table that were born in a time or worked in a time when it was about finding common solution. My opinion is, and it doesn't mean it's fact, but a good deal is usually when both parties get up from a table and both parties are either happy or both parties are not so happy, but one party is not happy and the other one's not mad. Because when you get that situation, then you're not getting a good deal. And America, for the last decade, has not been getting a good deal because one party or the other is ramrodding what it thinks should be done rather than working, but then you get opposition. It's a matter of how do you get these people back to understanding. You're public servants, you're there to serve the people, you're there for the good of the people, and you're not there for who you are or what you want to be. And until we get that portion solved, and I have a philosophy on that, and I'll try and cut this short. Reapportionment reform. What happens in this country is every state gerrymanders except for those that have a commission, such as Iowa. And in Iowa, it's done by computers and pure numbers, concise, compact, to the numbers they need for congressional district, for senatorial district, whatever. And then what you get is what you get. Right now, if you look at a map of Louisiana's new reapportionment, they've got a guy that runs from the Arkansas border to the Gulf of Mexico and almost over to Mississippi from the Texas state line to get his numbers. And he actually could have done, they could have done one just north of Louisiana, a lot more commonality. The gerrymandering process is being designed to give Democrats Democratic seats, Republicans Republican seats, and then what's left over becomes blue dogs, and it used to be the Tuesday morning club Republicans, which have kind of been absorbed by the, if you don't get in line with us, you got a problem. And it was those people that were in the middle that brought the extremes to the table, that worked the deals, that got things done. In my opinion, government's no different from business. A good deal works for both parties, or should work for both parties. And when it works for both parties, it works for the American people.
Congressman, if I may,
yes.
so your emphasis is really, we've heard that twice already, so the demise of Social Security is part of the issue that
Yes.
everybody needs to
Yes.
focus at as we move in this morning. As I move on to Congressman Zeliff, just show of hands, don't be ashamed, young people in the room, reapportionment, do you know what he's talking about? If you don't know, I want to see your hand. Just be honest, you don't know. Okay, so raise your hand if you do know. All right. So it's another word for redistricting. It happens every 10 years. Why? That's just the law. So every 10 years, the lines have to be redrawn. As a matter of fact, if everything works out okay, can't say who it is, but 3 very high-ranking folks in the Supreme Court will be joining us hopefully later today for an interview regarding this, because the Senate, they were fine with the House version of the maps, but with the Senate, there were 8 different districts that they were having beef with, and so they have to go back to the table because they have to make sure they look at different data for the population, et cetera, to make sure that things are copacetic, that things are the way they should be. So that's what's happening now. If you're going to, well, why do we draw the lines? Why do we care? Because those lines determine who can be in what area, who can run for office, and whoever wins has control of that for your concerns, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. So that is where the power lies, and you have to be cognizant of that. Okay, just want to put my 2 cents up there for the young folks. Congressman Zeliff, do you agree, disagree with the whole notion of, yes, the demise of Social Security? It's a dirty thought, it's an awful thought, but it is what it is.
I do agree.
Okay, why?
Well, we're going broke, and it's not sustainable.
Mike.
Mike? Ken? Okay. We're going broke, and the process we're on is not sustainable. Same thing with Medicare and Medicaid. It's real simple. And can I give one example of
Absolutely,
how
go for it.
serious? We're in crisis. We're in crisis. It's going to affect every one of you guys. It's going to affect our kids, my kids, our 3 boys, and it's also going to affect our 7 grandchildren. And I am totally committed to help in panels like this and other things. But I want to show, this is a dollar bill. 60% of this dollar is that part right there. Now, you're going to be, it's amazing, but if we put all our bills on the table, like say, pretend we're in your kitchen, and you and I are kind of, we spent the money, and we got to try to figure out how we're going to pay the bills. Well, we've got enough money to pay 60%. We don't have enough money to pay for the other 40%. Now, we're going to have to borrow from Chinese Lou, our new banker, right, to pay the other 40%. Plus, he's going to want some interest money. So I'm just going to do a quick 3-year scenario. The next year, we come back, same deal, except that Chinese Lou now has to give us another payment of 40% of the bills we can't pay, plus the interest. So we're up to 80 cents plus interest. The 3rd year, we're going up one more time. Oh, Chinese Lou, we really need your help. So Chinese Lou says, well, maybe one more time. So he gives us another 40 cents. We're at $1.20. We started out with 1. We spent $1. Now 3 years later, we're spending $1.20 plus all the interest that goes. It becomes an unsustainable path, just like our Social Security and just like our Medicare and Medicaid. So the bottom line is, it's a crisis. It's going to affect the next generation. And frankly, if we don't solve it, it'll be because we didn't have the guts to do it. And in my judgment, we cannot afford. We need to do this in the next 10 years. We need to knock $4 trillion off of our debt, and we need to do it now. We cannot afford to wait 1 year. And so that's the crisis that we face.
Thank you very much. As we continue with the discussion, I want to remind all of you that this panel is so awesome because it's diverse. You've got Democrats and Republicans. So if you go, well, they're leaning one way because that's just, the rhetoric that they, believe in. This is a mixed group. So they're telling you basically the same common denominator, the same underlying, issue, problems, concerns. So just want to keep that in mind. Congressman, I want you to say your name because I think it's fascinating how you say it.
Clement.
Clement.
Or you can say it Roberto Nelson Clemente.
Roberto Nelson Clemente. I like it. What is your take on everything? Do you agree with the 3 other gentlemen here on the panel about the issues with the dire situation with Social Security?
Ybeth, good to be with you, and it's good to be here at University of Central Florida, the 2nd largest university in the United States. And it's good to be here with the Dean and Dr. Dobson and my friend, Congressman Lou Frey. Lou did a great job in Congress representing all of you, and I'm just so pleased that you have this institute where you can share ideas and do everything you can to solve problems, and because we've got a lot of problems in this country. You got a great president, too. I want to comment on him, President John Hitt. He's a leader and visionary, and he's a friend of Bob Clement, too, and I like him very, very much, and he's making a real difference here. And my other 2 colleagues, Bill and Charles, now I'm one of the Democrats. And this is one of the Republicans right here. And then you got another Democrat right here, and then you got a Republican down there, so it's 2 and 2. But we, once upon a time, and I'll say this very quickly, if a Southerner knows how to talk quick, and we can solve these problems. I have not given up on America. And yes, these are tough issues. We talk about the budget. We talk about budget deficits. We talk about national debt. We talk about solving the problems with Social Security. We talk about reapportionment. We're going to talk about all these problems can be solved. But what you got to do is work together. It's a cohesive team. What I always did as a member of Congress, and I was there 15 years, I always attacked the issue. I did not attack my fellow colleague. They have a right. They have a right to their opinion, and I have a right to mine. And I'm not going to be gagged, and I'm going to express my opinion as forcefully as I possibly can in order to persuade them to go along with me. But there's nothing, and I want to underline this, and then I'm going to end my remarks. Nothing is wrong with compromise. If I can compromise, even though I don't get everything I want in Congress, but if I can compromise and I can move that ball forward down the field, Bob Clement's going to vote in that direction. Thanks.
All right. A lot of energy with that, and I think it's perfect timing because we are seeing something that it's just so nasty, the mudslinging. And, you know, part of the literature that you see here in this, by the way, I love the artwork. Marcia, great job, and whoever was involved with it. Frey Institute, it's about, you know, having these civil discussions about civics, the government, the process, politics. And I think that's where a lot of folks are kind of getting, everything's so heated, so intense, and then it just becomes rude. And so many folks, colleagues in the business who are journalists saying, you know, gosh, we've never seen anything like this, what's happening recently. It's just, folks are just so adamant, it's just nasty. They can't even look at each other going down the hallway. There was days where they would have fundraisers and events. Folks would play, you know, Democrats, Republicans, and softball teams, and baseball, and do all kinds of stuff. And they're saying a lot of the stuff's not happening. They can't even stand a stomach to look at each other, and that's just sad. It's sad. Let's go ahead and continue with our questions, okay? And we'll start, since we started with Congressman Frey, we'll just move our way down the line here. What must be done with the budget to avoid increasing the deficit in the future? We've discussed, you know, the financial crisis, severe recession, plus the slow recovery equals, you know, what exactly? And by the way, the folks in attendance, also you can look at all these charts that you've got here where really it breaks down. I see some of you have opened them up already, the pie charts, the graphs. Look at this, because it is a rude awakening, and the numbers are there from the Government Accountability Office, so this is straight from the federal government, of how serious the situation is.
Well, any problem that you set your mind to solve, you can solve it. But we're back to you've got to work to get it done. Mm-hmm. You've got to, each side's got to give some in order to achieve the balance that's necessary. You know, when you look at, and I think David Walker and the Pete Peterson Foundation has done some work that I was involved with, or at least watched closely when I was in the Congress. And it shows the swing from deficits to projected surpluses to deficits again. And you have a tendency in government that when there's extra money, everybody wants to spend it. You know, you can put a blame on any party you want, but there's enough blame to go around for both parties to be able to absorb it. And it's back to the old adage of, are you going to work for the good and the will of the people? Or are you going to work for your politics and your party? And being a Democrat, and with very many close Republican friends who have tried to convince me to become a Republican, I've told them as close as I could get would be an independent. But the sad truth of the matter is it's difficult to raise the money and get elected to a federal office as an independent. And that's a sad commentary. It happens occasionally, usually in smaller states. But I think until we put people in office, either it's through my reapportionment reform process or put people in office that truly want to do the will of the people, that's make government work for everyone, we're going to keep running into this roadblock. Can the budget problem be reformed? Can it be fixed? Yes, it can. Do we do it at a time when we're trying to regrow this economy? It's a good question. I think it's difficult yet, and the people that I was criticized most for doing the bailout of the auto industry, those were jobs, and now people are hollering because we're down 8.3% unemployment in the country. If we'd have not done that, we'd probably be at about 15% or better. If we'd not done a stimulus, we'd be in worse shape than the European Union is at this point in time. So it's a matter of you got to bite the bullet and do some things that you may not totally agree with. And as was mentioned by Representative Clement, it's about getting things done. It's about a mindset of working together for the good and the will of the people.
So if I may, Congressman, so then do we, just throwing it out there for discussion, are the options out there, or do we increase taxes, or do we cut programs to try and make up that money somewhere? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you take the Bush tax cuts, 10-year tax cuts. Now, my numbers may not be accurate. Now, whoever is with the coalition or whoever, my understanding is that the very wealthy who really made out like Flint under the Bush tax cuts, I've got a cousin that's very wealthy. He says he could have taken the money he got back in taxes every year and gone and bought a house in a different country and sustained it with the monies that he got back in taxes, while the middle class apparently suffered paying more taxes. We need to do away with the loopholes. We need to get back onto what is fair, what works, but we can't do it without having a revenue source and trying to figure out where we're wasting money. Now, you get into the budget, and every item in the budget's got a grandparent or a father or a mother and has a constituency that follows. And so every dollar that's in that budget got there because there's somebody that cares about it. Whether it's ALS, whether it's breast cancer, whether it's, you name it, it's there because someone cared about it. And it's a matter of what can we decide upon as a body, the Congress, that we can afford to do without, and what do we need? And it's just like doing your budget at home. You figure out what you need, you figure out what you want, and then you look at how much dollars you've got and you make the decisions. And if you don't, then you either go get another job, or your spouse goes to work, or your children have to get jobs, whatever it takes to keep that household running. And that's what the Congress is going to have to do. They've got to figure out what they're willing to put on the table, what they're willing to sacrifice in terms of their politics to make this country run.
Beyond the cover page, okay, of the I call it the pie chart or the chart, chunk of literature that you got. I don't know, I just numbered it by myself, but look at page number 2. It's got the pie chart, 1971, 1991, 2011, and then the projection for 2021. Do you guys see that? Mandatory spending consuming a growing share of the budget. Do you guys see that? Nod, yes, no? Okay, well, I'll make a copy for you guys afterwards. Maybe it's just something I have extra special for myself. But it's got the mandatory, the net interest, and the discretionary. I'll make a copy of that, so my apologies, because I was going to refer to it, but you don't have it, so that's all right. But you've got plenty of other information there that breaks down the percentages of what is needed, what wiggle room you may have to add, when it comes to defense spending, et cetera, so you guys can look at that as we continue the discussion. Congressman Zeliff, the ball's on your court.
Sure. A couple of statistics. 2/3 or better than 60% is called entitlements. 40% is discretionary, military, non-military. What's happened, they used to be in reverse before. It used to be 40% entitlements. It's grown now to 60, continues to grow past that. And frankly, there will be no discretionary left if we continue on. A couple basic thoughts. Our total spending is roughly 3.5, 3.6 trillion. Our revenue that we come in on right now is roughly 15%, and the 3.6 trillion spending equates to 24% of gross domestic product. And guess what the difference is? 9%, that's debt. So that's what we're dealing with, $1.3 trillion worth of debt. Now, one thought that we can just throw out, there's $1.4 trillion worth of special loopholes in our IRS situation, 1.4 trillion. So think about it. We eliminate that, and guess what? We eliminate the debt. So is it doable? Sure, it's doable. The real problem is that all of us here today, by 12 o'clock noon, can solve the problem. We can come up with all the answers that we could agree on. But our problem is going back to Washington and getting everybody else to agree that we have the most common sense, the best brains, that we can figure this all out. So that's part of the process. In my judgment, everything has to be on the table. Here's a book here. Tom Coburn from Oklahoma, a senator who was on the commission, came up with a book of waste, call it his waste book, okay? And I'll give you one example. $35 million split between Republicans and Democrats for their upcoming convention. $35 million. Check it out.
Because all that stuff takes money. You know, the setting up of the place, the literature, the
Absolutely.
microphones, the lights.
So it all takes money, but let them raise it other ways. Let them raise theirs, let us raise ours. It does not belong in the budget. So that's an example of what we have to do. If you go back to 1990, and I introduced, along with a Democrat, Rob Andrews was the A, and I was the Z, and we called it A to Z to spending, and it was a real simple process. It just means that we go back to every single committee, every single program, and the 1990s and later are where we really expanded government, the role of government. That's where we have the duplicate programs. That's where the real waste has come in. If we go back to a baseline of 1990, and we go back and every committee does the job that they're supposed to do, and I'd like to see them do it on C-SPAN so everybody could take a look at it. And guess what? They're going to be held accountable. Show me a congressman that doesn't like having his picture taken. Everybody up here, we all like it. So guess what? It will appeal. And I think that we can eliminate a lot of programs, a lot of waste. We can talk about reforming our tax code, that 1.4 trillion that's out there. We can eliminate the deficit, and we can start taking a whack at the previous deficits. We just have to have the guts to be able to start. And we can't wait till next year. We need to do it this year.
Congressman Clement, you want to chime in as well, please?
Okay. Number one, this is a wonderful document here. And I hope all of you will keep this, because very few people in this country have a document like this. And I want to congratulate the Concord Coalition and the Graduate School of Political Management at George Washington University. And you need to study this a lot. Now, I know we're going to have an exercise today, and you're going to have to make some decisions. You've got a lot of options. So you just go through that material and think about how it affects people, how it affects the future, what sacrifices are going to have to be made in order to get us back on track. Let me tell you a short story about when I ran for Congress the first time in Nashville, Tennessee. And right in the middle of the TV debate, and knowing I wanted to win so badly, but here I'm right in the middle of a TV debate, and the moderator, just like the one we have today, asked my opponent the question about taxes. and said, will you raise taxes if you get elected to Congress? And remember, this was an open seat. The two of us are running, and one of us is going to be elected congressman. And my opponent said, right in the middle of the TV debate, and I didn't know what he was going to say, he said, if you elect me, I will never, ever raise your taxes. And then they turned to me. Now, what should I have said? And I responded, I thought that's the most irresponsible statement I've ever heard. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know what crisis might occur. And if you really want to get talk about that last war, the Iraqi war, where we paid 100% of the cost of the war, we taxpayers. Where that first Iraqi war, by us being patient and doing it correctly, we had our allies pick up 90% of the first Iraqi war. And did we ask the question in the last Iraqi war, before we went to war, do you mind having your taxes raised if we go to war? What about if we'd asked that question first? Do you mind having your taxes raised before we go to war? What would have been the answer? So you've got a lot of options. But what we need in this country right now, more than anything else, and underline this, is political courage. And we have political courage. Yes, we can solve the problems, but you've got a lot of options, and it's going to take sacrifice, and you're going to have to prioritize. But these exercises are very necessary, and I hope you'll share them with the members of Congress in the House and the Senate, as well as the President, after you finish your exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Something I want to touch on, time right now is 10:07, so we're going to keep doing some more questions, and then at about 10:20, we're going to open it up for you guys to ask any questions that you may have, okay? As you look at your exercise that you'll do later, thinking, well, how am I going to solve this problem? These folks have done it and seen it all just about, and they need your fresh minds, your fresh ideas to kind of help us navigate through this very difficult topic, okay? So if you're thinking, I'm just gonna, sit around and just kind of mark, this is very, serious, and we want you guys to get involved. So as you peruse through the pages there. I'm gonna skip over, if I may, to, Marcia, I'm gonna skip over to one of the questions. I think it's perfect for the age group that we have here. What about the contributions of the younger generations? Are they ever to see the funds that have paid for, the entitlement programs, Medicare and Social Security? Meaning, folks reach what age and they start getting a little bit of money? 65?
Actually, you can draw it. You can
62. 62, and then you start getting, wouldn't that be nice?
67.
You've put in your time, you've worked, so now you start get this check from the government. My mother just turned, so she just started getting it like 6 months ago. However, that may not be there, that extra cushion may not be there for you when you reach that age, and that's the whole concern. How do you see this going forward? Because it's so hard to talk about what's going to happen 10 years from now, much less, a few decades from now when these folks get to be 62. Will the age have to change, make it a little older so then they can keep working a little longer and therefore hopefully have a piece of this pie? I think we'll start off with you, Congressman Zeliff.
Well, the answer is we got to solve the problem now to affect the younger generation. Obviously, we've got to solve the problem now or there will be no program. I mean, bottom line, it's not just the young people. It's important that they're paying in. You guys are going to be paying in to the system and getting nothing back. My kids, my grandchildren, the same deal. So we need to fix it now. I'm 76 years old, 77. I'm taking a flight to Washington tonight. I'll be working in D.C. for the rest of the week. I'll fly back down to the west coast of Florida for the weekend. I'm working, I'm healthy, and guess what? I think we ought to raise the age to 70. Now, that's one thing. I think we got to look at the whole Social Security program and all the other expenditures that are going on. Look at the policy, look at what money is going out, how much fraud's involved with it. That has to be done as well. But the bottom line is we can't put it off any longer.
Thank you very much. Short and sweet, I appreciate that. So can't put it off any longer as we continue with you, Congressman Clement. Is there any, like maybe 2 specific things that you can give us that could be done in the, I'm going to say long term, but really it seems so, 10 years is going to go by so fast. I just turned 40 last year. I said, what happened? I was in high school the other day. Yeah, it feels that way, doesn't it? As you get older, it seems like it's getting away from you faster and faster. And I think these folks, you guys are in high school, and some of them are your UCF, and you're dressing nice, and you're going out to the club, and you're doing your fun things. And I know, you're nodding, you're laughing, I hear you. But there comes a point where you're going to have to tighten that belt and go, you know, my friend may drive a BMW, but I'm going to be able to drive something not as fancy. And that's okay. I think, you know, the way our mentality in America has changed. If you can put a little money extra in the bank because the government may not be there to help you out down the road as much as our parents and our grandparents did. Is there any 2 things you can point out in the next 10 years that can be done?
Well, Ybeth, you're never going to get old, so
Thank
we don't
you.
have to worry about that. The Social Security was founded in the Roosevelt administration, and there were 16 workers for every Social Security recipient. And now we're down to 3 to 1. 3 workers for every Social Security recipient, and it very well could go to 2 to 1. So that puts a lot of burden, a lot of obligation on the Social Security system, and as a lot of you know, more and more we have an aging society. And we have reformed Social Security before, and we very well may reform it again. And I think Ybeth said, well, what options are available? And matter of fact, in your material, you have some of that pointed out. One, you could cut the benefits. 2, you could increase the FICA tax, the Social Security tax. Even today, more people pay Social Security tax than they pay federal income tax. You could mean test, which simply means if you make a lot of money, you would get little in return from Social Security. So there are some options available, and you could privatize. And you hear some members of Congress talking about that you could opt out. Well, what does that do if you opt out? And then there are just so many people left in the Social Security system, and you let people opt out. What would happen to the Social Security fund? It is solvent today, but we shouldn't just ignore it as if it's always going to be solvent. And that's why we need to look at all of our options as we plan the future.
Thank you. And we'll continue the same question with you, Congressman Lou Frey. And as I look at this wonderful information that you cited, the Concord Coalition, listen to this. Okay, so 2011 now, percentage population age 65 and older. 2011, it's about 13%. The year 2020, 65 and older goes up to between 15 and 20%. Fast forward to 2030, just past 20%. Hence, more people needing it. Bless you, he just sneezed. More people needing it, but less money being in the pot. And fast forward to the year 2040, over 22% of the population. And then you've got the that are 65 and older. Then you've got the, like I said, the aging population, and then the explosive health care costs. And that's another, that's another issue that we need to tackle with. Lou Frey, you have all the answers. Make it better.
Yeah, I wish I could. Sometimes, every once in a while, I say my prayers at night. I pray for a 2-year attitude in the Congress. And by that I mean the fact that somebody will go up there and know that when they take on Social Security, there's a third rail in terms of getting burned to death. But unless we have that approach, nothing is really going to be done. I think all of us up here remember when we took the oath of office and stood in the floor of the House, we didn't take it the Republican Party, the Democrat Party. We took it to preserve, protect, defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And as important as the different issues are, unless we're going to go with that attitude, just isn't going to work. Social Security, and both of you brought up good points. There's a simple way to solve it. Age, delay when it starts. You're going to have now supposedly 20 years a life left when you get to 65, and increase the amount of money that you pay in taxes. I mean, if you want it solved, that'll solve it. Doesn't solve all the problems, but it certainly solves Social Security. And one of the things you're going to see in the outlines you've been given is some wonderful looks at different issues in Medicare, Medicaid, how it works and what things you have to do. But every one of those issues comes down to something that's going to be painful. It's going to hurt. And yet, I think it has to be done, and it's the right thing that has to be done. And I'm really intrigued to see what examples you'll come up with. One thing I want to take a personal minute to thank Drew Lanier and Doug Dobson and Marcia Bexley and Nicole and everybody who worked so hard to put this program together, and they've done an outstanding job, and I think we ought to give them a round of applause.
Yeah, I give 2 thumbs to that statement for sure. They give us all this amazing literature to get ready and everything that you see at your tables, and it's not easy getting an event ready, and especially something with such, heavy-duty topics as this. I think this is a great time to talk about. Can I? Yes, you may.
10-second item.
Absolute. Go.
10-second
Yes.
item.
We'll give you 20 because you came so
All right. Instead of automatic pilot on entitlement programs, put them on an annual review, just like everything else in spending. It would make a huge difference, and it's a big one.
Interesting.
I didn't get on the Social Security one, and
Yes, you were.
I think I concur in many ways with what's being said. For those of you that are younger and don't understand what Social Security really is, it is not a retirement fund. It is a supplement. Mm-hmm. It was started because people were working all their lives, and particularly the lower income wage earners who did not have the capacity to save or save adequately for retirement. This gave them hope that there would be some revenue so that we wouldn't be having all homeless and hungry people out shaking the cans on the street in the future years. It's way before my time because I was during Roosevelt's term. But we've got to repay the trust fund. That's the first thing that needs to happen. A plan immediately to start repaying the monies that has been borrowed by the government to run its operations back in the Social Security Trust Fund. Then we need to lock the trust fund away from the politicians in Washington. Mm-hmm. We all took an oath of office. Lou tells you that. That oath of office said that you will do what is right by the country. I don't have the words, but if you go and look at the oath that we all take. So if you've taken a tax pledge to not pass any taxes, then you violated your oath of office because you're not doing everything that's necessary or considering everything that's necessary in order to make your government work. And what we've spoke about reviewing every year, that's a hell of a good way to see that the programs are running. I don't know if a year by year, but at least a cycle by cycle. So an every bi-year, 2-year review probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So can it be done? Yeah, it can be done. And then we look at, as we go through the process, reforming how we go. I'm 64, I'll be 65 this year. And I'm afraid that my wife may have to put up with me for another 20 years or so. And I don't think she's afraid that she may have to also. But the reality is that we're living longer, and it's costing more in that respect. So yeah, maybe that's where we have to start, is once we reform the program, once we lock away the money, once we get the politicians out of the trust fund, or their hands out of the trust fund, then we can say, this is where it'll start on next generation, or the age limit, and start, this is when you'll receive, this is what you'll receive. And you can't keep coming in and changing who gets it every time politically constituents show up and say, we need more. But it can be done.
Yes, Congressman Clement.
Hey, Beth, I wanted to add one comment too. If you want to solve a Social Security fund, one area that we need to devote a lot of time and attention to is creating jobs. If you create jobs and you have more people paying within the system, that in itself solves a lot of problems. Just like I mentioned a while ago, 16-to-1 when we first started, 16 workers for every Social Security recipient. And we've got to do a better job creating jobs, because a lot of you are going to be looking for jobs now and in the future. Not only you want a job, but you want a better job. And middle class is truly being squeezed right now. And so we need to do everything we can to bring about a climate. Government can't do everything for the people, but we can develop a climate in order to make sure that we have more jobs and better jobs for our people, so we can solve these difficult, complex problems.
When you talk about climate, Congressman, do you think there is a clash of socioeconomic level right now that people should be feeling guilty that they have a nice job, that they have nice things, because others, unfortunately, because of the economy, do not? And there seems to be that kind of class warfare. That's the coined phrase that seems to be used lately. Because America is about that. It's about capitalism and trying to do great for yourself, for your family, for your children, so they can have opportunities that you may not have had. Do you see that in Washington right now? Because a lot of the political pundits, when you watch TV, I don't care if it's CNN, Fox News, that's a coined phrase that seems to be used a lot because of all the doom and gloom and talk about dire financial situations like we're talking about now. Do you see that there's some sort of, guilt factor with, trying to, I don't know, live the American dream?
Yes, I do. I don't think it's helpful. It's caused a lot of divisiveness between people and groups and organizations about the haves and the have-nots and the rich and the poor and the middle class. We all have to work together. We all have to make things happen. But the fact is, half the population today pays no federal income tax.
Why?
At all.
Why?
Now,
Why is that?
are you going to put that on the people, or you going to put that on the government, or what? I thought there'd be a real outrage when it came out that some of the presidential candidates only paid 15%, when Bob Clement and others pay 30% and above, But when half the population are not paying any federal income tax at all, then there's not going to be a real outrage. But I'm one of them that feels like the time has come where we need to throw out what we have now, and maybe we need to go to a flat income tax. Maybe we need to go to another type of taxation rather than what we have now. As we know, this scale that we have now, a lot of people don't realize this, but once upon a time we had tax rates, federal income tax rates of 70% plus. Now it's in the 30s. And then you have some of the presidential candidates, it's 15% what their tax rate is. So I don't know. I think the time has come that we need to look very seriously at reforming our tax system and make it fair and make it where people understand how to fill it out. I mean, I wouldn't even
so
know where
confusing, I
to
know.
start to fill it out today. You know,
It's
and I think
confusing.
that's true with most people.
I have no
And that's half the
idea.
battle's confused. Congressman Zell, if you get the last word on this, and then we're going to open up to Q&A.
Well, I think we are, with the 47% that are not paying taxes, we are becoming more and more of an entitlement society. That's going to increase, and when it gets over to 50%, they're going to want more. And I think the idea of teaching a man to fish and not giving him the fish is a good concept. We can put job training programs together. We can do a lot of things to help people become rich, but they have to have what it takes inside to be willing to work. And I think we've got to take a look at a lot of that. So I agree with what's been said, but I think it doesn't hurt to have everybody pay a little bit. A little skin in the game. When I was in the political arena, if I got somebody that donated $5 to my campaign, they have skin in the game and they care about what the result is. And we got to start doing that in America, and we got to stop giving away the store across the board, including foreign aid and a whole bunch of other stuff. But people can be rich if they want to get out and work hard. It's the greatest country in the world. And I'll tell you what, talk to your cab drivers in Washington, D.C. Talk to the cab drivers here. They're probably from the Middle East or some other place. They had to learn where the roads are. They're out working. They're making a go of it. Talk about some of the people, the immigrants that have come over here and have great successes. They came over here with nothing. I think we got it pretty damn good, even in tough times. And we got to start realizing that, and we got to change the system. So skin in the game is the name of the game, I think.
Thank you, Congressman Zell. Raise your hands if you have any questions. You know, there's nothing, and we'll walk around the room. We have a microphone. I just looking around, I see a multicultural group of folks here, and it just, you know what he's talking about. We came to this country in '81. My mom worked at OIA scrubbing floors. I've been a waitress. You work your way up. We got government cheese. Oh, in East Orange County, the nice brown box, make grilled cheese. But, you know, it felt so empowering to be able to get out of needing the help. It was wonderful that it was there when we needed it at the very beginning when we moved here in '81. But then you get your job and another job. And I had 3 jobs, and everybody in the house was working, and you get out of getting that government assistance, you feel empowered. But when you can't get a job and when you can't seem to get a break, then that's where it kind of becomes a gray area. But it is empowering once you get out of the system and, you know, make your honest living. Okay, we have a question here. Yeah.
First of all, thank you. But I did not hear any of you mention cutting the tax credits for overseas jobs or bringing money back from overseas to invest here and giving amnesty to all the money that's out. You mentioned a candidate that's only paying 15%. A lot of his money is overseas because we're not going to give out. I would like you to comment on both those areas. You would bring a lot of money back into the states by doing both of those.
I think that speaks what Representative Clements said. It's about reforming the system. And the reform of the system is closing the loopholes, whether it's corporate loopholes or personal income tax loopholes. That's all part of what needs to be done. They need to reform it from top to bottom. You know, we all have differing opinions, but that's why members of Congress need to be able to sit down civilly and have the open discussions and figure out, okay, when we get up from the table, nobody will be truly happy because they've had to give up something. But if you give up something for the common good, that's what it's supposed to be about. So
I think it's important to mention the 15% was a capital gains rate. That particular individual, we have to recognize the law allows, if you want to take, and just think about it, and I don't think he did a good job of explaining it. You take your money and you get it from a corporation, you report it and pay taxes, corporate taxes, which are currently 35%, which is way, way too much. Then you take your money and you invest it in something else and you get a capital gains return, which is another 14 or 15%. You add that to the 35, you're now paying 50%. So it's not fair just to say that they're screwing the government, because it's not accurate. If you want to change the capital gains rate, that's fine. But that particular individual gets his money from capital gains. He's investing in companies. And any of us can all do that. The biggest problem that we have is, do we want to risk everything and invest in a venture, sometimes a high-risky venture? That's a question that what kind of tolerance do we have for speculative things?
Well, I think we have a question in the other side of the room. Yes.
Well, I wanted to comment on that too. I'm not sure I totally agree with my colleague over here, Republican colleague, because I do think a number of national U.S. multinational corporations are screwing the government. And they're leaving the money overseas. Yeah. And I've got some at home that are doing that, and it makes me furious, because they're leaving the money overseas so it won't be taxed. And they leave it over there indefinitely, and it's not being taxed. Matter of fact, you've got that opportunity, and on these charts too that are pointed out. Matter of fact, you can correct it today about responding to that. But I do think it's a serious problem, and I think it would help us reduce our deficits that we're facing today by making sure they pay their fair share of tax. It's not that they're not paying tax, or maybe some like GE wasn't paying any tax. But the fact is, oh yeah, they're following the legal guidelines. They're paying what tax they're supposed to pay. But the fact is, they're sure taking advantage of the rest of us.
And one of the things that I think, from a congressional standpoint, the laws that are passed by the Congress are usually, the members are lobbied by the corporations to ask for those specific exemptions in the hopes of creating more jobs domestically. That's the auspices of which it comes, but it hasn't been the reality of what has happened.
I've fussed with this for a long time. There was a guy named Frank Bowe from Ohio who, every time there was an appropriations bill in the House, moved to take 5% of it off. Never worked. I thought it was a heck of a good idea, but when you're looking at the practical side of what you're doing, it'd be great to have a flat tax, or another way to do it. I jump right on that. You're not going to have it. And so when you look at the ability to do something about that issue, which you probably have some unanimity on, but yet it doesn't put that much money in the ballpark. It's something, I'm not knocking it, look at the numbers in there. But what you really need, I think, in the tax rate is somebody's got to say, okay, we'll bump the amount that you have to pay taxes from maybe 10 to 12%, and the next one from 15 to 17%. I think we need a small increase in the brackets across the line. And
At least till we're out of this problem.
Yeah, and it would get us out of the problem.
When taking on economic issues, should one have a moral bias or a logical bias, as in would one outweigh the other? For example, foreign policy with, I know, issues like warlords, Joseph Kony, Uganda, and other neighboring countries. How should one approach issues like that in regards to our economy?
Well, that's what public debate's supposed to be all about. That's what the government is, the philosophy of running government is supposed to be about, having those open discussions, making some decisions, walking away with an answer, rather than just having a public battle and screaming and see if you can get your constituents and your ideologically leaning followers to start a war beat. And that seems to be more what government's gotten about, is the latter, rather than resolving and getting things done. When we talk about foreign aid and money to other governments, I'm in the sugar business, at least I was, and to this day, the federal government allows sugar to be imported from countries that were our allies back in the World War II period. some of which don't even produce sugar anymore, but still get to import sugar into this country. Philippines doesn't produce sugar for exportation, but still has the largest export of sugar into this country because the price is a better price. So they're making money just like the hedge fund guys on Wall Street. They move a piece of paper and they get paid because they moved the paper. They didn't add any value to the paper. So, you know, a lot of these things, we need to go back and revisit them. I talked about reviewing programs. That's one. World War II was in the 1940s.
By the way, when you look at your charts, foreign aid, which everybody thinks if you solve that, the problem is solved. Foreign aid is fifth from the bottom in terms of the programs that are non-defense discretionary programs. So, you know, it's great to be against foreign aid. It's politically easy to get it, but even if you look at it, I don't ever look at it as foreign aid. I look at it as U.S. aid. And if there's something that will help the United States, even in another country, I'm for it. And I just think it's a very common sense way to approach it.
Congressman Zeliff, yeah.
Can I take this?
Only temporarily.
Only temporarily. There's other things besides foreign aid, but is money spent in foreign countries. We have a defense budget that is huge. We have troops all over the world. We're going to have to start taking a look at all the troops that are stationed all over the world. Do we really need them? And the wars of the future are going to be fought quick, move, stay, like the Navy will be Navy SEALs, Special Forces. They'll be stationed on board a battleship. They're not going to be going, I mean, admittedly, we're going to give up a lot, but we no longer can afford it. We are broke. Think about it. We are broke. We cannot be great if we're broke. So isn't it time to start cutting back and all that? And we ought to have, before we go into Iraq, and before we go to Afghanistan, we ought to have approval of Congress to allow us to go in. This business of one administration, we're both guilty on both sides, are making a decision to move forward without congressional consent is wrong. So there's a lot of stuff. When you add it to the foreign aid, Lou, I think it's a sizable number.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. The War Powers Act has been a failure. Right. And that came as a result of Vietnam. When I was there, we thought we could get the approval process, the Congress would get involved. Didn't work. Government, Republican, Democrat, just did what they wanted to do.
And the nation building thing is incredible. I mean, what are we trying to be?
And then that brings me up to like a two-pronged statement, you know, to the gentleman with the bow tie who asked the question. You know, when there's conflicts around the world, the two-pronged statement I want to make is that does America see the humanitarian need and go, my gosh, we've got to help out? And then the other part of that is other countries see, well, why does America have to stick its nose in it? But how could we not do anything when people are dying or they're hungry? And so it's a very difficult decision.
Well, let me complicate it for you, because when I was elected to Congress, 54.6% of the total budget went for defense. You know, and now that's way, way down. So we're spending half as much.
Still too much.
Yeah, I'm not arguing about that, but we're half as much as what we did before.
But if we don't get involved, then we could let our, guard down, and something god-awful could happen. Any more questions? You guys have any questions?
I wanted to comment about foreign aid, too.
Yes, sir.
Shortly, and I wanted to put in a good word for foreign aid, honestly, to tell you the truth. It is 1% of the budget. I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but we tie 60% of investment to foreign aid, which means, yes, we'll give you foreign aid, but you've got to buy U.S. products. We've tried to get away from just a handout and a giveaway. But I do think we have a commitment and an obligation overseas, because we are the one and only superpower on Earth now, whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. But we also know the demise of the Soviet Union because of overreaching. So we've got to get our financial house in order. But I don't think we want to be isolated either. And I am for a strong national defense. I spent 2 years regular Army and 29 years in the Army National Guard. But there are a lot of ways we can streamline, just as Bill said a while ago, and operate more efficiently and change our missions and bring troops home. So I do not think that the Defense Department should get a blank check, period.
We have just barely 4 minutes, so one more question and then we'll close it out. Or what? 2 quick questions, real quick.
Hi, my name is Alan. I'm part of Life at UCF. And number one, you spent a lot of time this morning on social security. Social security is not part of the budget. Social security is an insurance vehicle to pay seniors. It can be brought, it's not in crisis at this point, but it will be in crisis in the future. There are more than $2 trillion in the U.S. Treasury funds backing up Social Security at this point. All we have to do is tweak it a couple of points one way or the other, and Social Security will be solved for everybody.
And that's why it's been a big topic for us today. As we move along, if we could just move our way to the front here. And that's why we will continue to talk about it throughout the day, because the young lady in the red dress here. But I wish I could see everybody's name, and I can't. But you bring up a very good point, sir, and that is it's got to be in the forefront, especially with the young folks looking ahead, of course. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to address something that Mr. Zeller said earlier about immigration and then also with the foreign aid. It's kind of to the extent of it's not that they're coming over and taking jobs from us, it's that they're coming over and trying to create a standard of living that we should want for ourselves, but we're not making an initiative to step up to that level. It's kind of that whole sort of foreign concept of we're getting lazy. And we're going to these people not only because it's cheaper, but because they're more willing to do the work than we are ourselves. And you can't make something out of nothing. You have to create that step up, because all of you in here, you need to work together to create some sort of basis, like you said, compromise. Not everyone has the same agreement, but you can create something together so that way we're actually moving forward instead of just ramming into each other and getting nowhere, essentially moving backwards.
Bring up a very, very, very good point.
Since you mentioned my name, could I respond?
Yes.
I agree with everything you said as far as they take over a lot of jobs that we are too, if you want to use the word lazy, I would agree with that, or we just don't want to do them. Dishwashers in my business, I ran a country inn for 25 years. Nobody wants to wash dishes, including me, but I ended up washing dishes a lot of times because I wanted to survive. So the problem that we have with immigration, we don't have the guts to solve the problem. We have a lot of immigrants here. This is what our country is founded on. We want to continue that. But we want legal immigration, and there are a lot of benefits that we pay to people who come over, and they ought to earn those benefits. They ought to go through the same process that people who get their green cards and become citizens. And there's nothing more exciting. When I was a congressman, I would try to show up as many of those new citizens in the United States. What a great thing. We're not talking about changing any of that. We're talking about the illegals that are coming over. And then we're paying for all the benefits that go. That's why we're going broke. It's one more little clog in that whole scenario. I'm sure these guys got a lot to add to that.
Thank you, Congressman Zeller. I think we're just run out of time. I'm so sorry. If you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to approach them here when we wrap up. As I conclude this part of today's event, I just want to say I've been writing notes and just over and over and over hearing about the attitude the politicians have, that candidates have toward each other. It's very poor. Bipartisan, if you can keep it positive, would be the phrase to remember as we move forward. And I want to just, in closing, since your name is on the backdrop, Congressman Lou Frey, reading your bio, in 1970 you addressed the Florida Republican State Convention. It was a very divisive time during the primaries for governor and U.S. Senate. So you've seen it then. Is it any different than to now? And how can these young folks who may be volunteering for somebody's campaign move forward being bipartisan, having a good attitude, and still, you know, doing, working out through the American political process.
Well, very quickly, Florida is the 46th state in physics or in civics illiteracy. And Senator Graham and I, after 4 years of work, got a bill passed where now in 7th grade, everybody gets a year of civics, and you take a test, and you pass it, you go to 8th grade. And also in 1st grade now through 12th grade, when you study reading and writing, 30% of that is going to be American history and civics as we go through. And the reason I point that out is just, again, common sense. If you're going to play football, you better know the field's 100 yards long, you know. And how 40% of the people in this state can't tell you the 3 branches of government we have. 42% can't explain separation of powers. 73% of our 4th graders in a multiple choice test can't pick the Constitution out as our leading legal document. So what I think is happening in Florida is we're going through a tremendous change in what we're doing. We're going to have 1 million young people through this program in 5 years, and I hope that this program and what we're doing maybe spreads across the country, because you can't have bipartisanship without civility. You've got to understand the rules and what it's all about, and there's nothing wrong with building, I don't think, from the basics in this thing. So I have got incredible hope in what we're doing. I look at this audience and I'm filled with hope. You know, we've all struggled away at it. You probably can't do much of a worse job, so. And I don't really mean that. Let me take that back. That's not true. We have good people in Washington and staff, good members of Congress on both sides of this thing. We just have to encourage those people to speak out and not be afraid.
Legislative, executive, and judicial, just saying. All right, thank you very much. Round of applause, please. Congressman Lou Frey, Congressman Bill Zeliff, Congressman Bob Clement, and Congressman Charles Melancon. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.